I was raised on the outskirts of Preston, a small town in southern Idaho with a population of around 5,000. More immediate community was an isolated dead-end dirt road called Bear Creek. Less than 20 families lived in Bear Creek. I didn't mind being so isolated. I grew up in the comfort of wide fields and close neighbors that only rural people know. We were a Mormon community, very church-centered, very community-centered. All young girls, myself included, were a part of the young women's group, and all the boys were members of the local Boy Scout troop, which doubled as a church group area. We had a 4th of July parties at the local ballpark, swam in the nearby reservoir. It was a good, quiet community. My house, a 92-year-old farmhouse built by my great-great-grandfather, was situated in a small hill surrounded by the wide grass field on the side, and then a snaking dirt road on the other. Across the road was a creek bottom southern Idaho, categorized as a desert climate, so not much grows outside of the irrigated fields besides sagebrush and burrs. The creek bottoms were the exception. The creek fed the growth of a thick tangle of pussy willow bushes in the late fall. We used to go down in the bottoms and pick white cotton pussy willow seeds to decorate the fences on the driveway. What's that's what they're called. Why are you so immature?
Don't tell me it's so, what? No.
What?
Okay, whatever. Just continue the Mormon story.
Being so isolated, it was uncommon for animals to come down from the mountains. We had female moose who brought her calf down and lived in our orchard every winter, and the occasional lion wasn't heard of either. The summer when I turned 8, I remember because it was the same year as my baptism, a smaller mountain lion was spotted several times in the area. We weren't worried. The big cats stayed far away from the farms and usually moved on when the area didn't yield enough food. The same summer, my neighbor Peyton was working on his Eagle Scout project. He loved National Geographic and thought it would be pretty cool to try putting together a National Geographic submission on our little creek bottoms. The young lion that happened to be in the area at the same time made him especially excited. He decided he wanted to try and get pictures of the lion and emailed the National Geographic team for advice. They recommended setting up an automatic camera that takes shots every couple seconds in the area the lion was known to visit. They also recommended setting some kind of bait so that the lion was more likely to come by. No one in the creek liked that idea of live bait or carrion, so we came up with a different kind of bait. We decided to set up an audio recording of a dying rabbit to play on a loop. Those settings of speakers were hidden in the willows. I remember when everyone was down in the bottoms testing the speakers and I heard the noise for the first time. The sound of a dying rabbit is horrible. It's been described as almost identical to the sound of a screaming child. If you've ever heard one yourself, there's plenty of recordings online. It's worth a listen. Should we?
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay, let's both search that up right now.
What is it called?
Sound of a dying rabbit.
That's a loud ass noise.
Yeah. Well, god damn. There it is.
There's the noise.
Worth a listen. I'm gonna put it in the video again, but like 5 times as loud. Alright.
So rip headphone users.
Yep. It gives me an excuse to use reverse flash again. Okay, the camera was set up, the speakers were set up, everything was perfect. Peyton explained that he would allow the camera and recording to play uninterrupted for a week, and then he would go check on it. This would give him time for a scent fade to the bottoms and encourage the lion to come closer. At first I was worried about the noise. It was truly a horrible noise, and my house was the closest setup to the bottoms. My father assured me that the noise wouldn't reach as far as our house, and I was relieved when we arrived home, and he was correct. The bottoms were far enough away that I didn't hear anything. I remember Peyton and the next day in church. He was fidgety and excited to check on the equipment, but he had to wait a week, which everyone kept reminding him of. He couldn't risk going down too early and scaring the lion away for good. That night, I woke up to an awful noise. I sat Ramrod. Did I miss something? Who the fuck is Ramrod?
I got no idea.
Okay, whatever. I sat Ramrod straight in my bed with my eyes wide, dark, hands clutched so hard my palms before my indent of fingernails for hours later. I knew that noise. It was a recording of the rabbit. It sounded faint and far off, like it could have been coming from the bottoms, but that was impossible because the recording had been going all night the previous day and hadn't heard anything. I didn't sleep that night. I was too scared to get out of bed and wake my parents. The recording played over and over again. I had the loop memorized. In the morning, I stumbled into the kitchen for breakfast. My mom and dad were sitting at the kitchen table. They too had dark rings under their eyes. I hadn't been the only one who heard it. Mom was convinced that the equipment must have been broken. She wanted to go down to the bottoms and check it out. Dad refused. He was a kind, gentle man and didn't want to stir up any unnecessary drama. He was sure there had been a strong wind last night, and the wind was carrying noise faster than its natural reach. He told us to listen. We did. He was right. We couldn't hear it now. Is that how it works?
I don't think so. I
This
don't
wind?
think
Yeah.
wind does that. I mean, like we have computers and phones, so we could probably search it up.
Or no, don't do that. Let's just say that he's wrong.
But we'll just say he's wrong.
He's just wrong.
He's just
All right.
wrong.
Yep. We forgot about it and went along our daily goings. The next night, it happened again. I stayed up in bed with my back to the wall. The screaming was even louder than before. But this time something was different. It was lower pitched than I remember, and parts of the loop were slowed down, as if the recording were warped in places. At times that did not loop, it did not loop naturally, and instead picked up random place in the middle. My mom didn't mention anything at the breakfast table, but both her and my dad seemed tense. The third night I mustered the courage to stand beside my bedroom window and look in the yard. For a moment I stood, rooted to the spot, my hands shaking no matter how hard I clenched them. The noise sided in through the cracks in my window. I watched the outline of the trees in the yard, perfectly still. Not even the slightest breeze stirred the branches. My mom announced the next day that she would be going to visit her sister's town the next day, and would probably spend the night there. She invited me to come along, but I was Daddy's girl at heart and chose to stay at the farm. I took Mom's place beside Dad and in the right bed that night, but even that didn't help. I didn't think my dad was asleep either, or he was unnaturally still the whole night. We began to hear a noise during the day too. I was drawing with chalk on the sidewalk when it happened. There was only one scream, a short, high-pitched one, and then the recording fell silent. It happened again several times throughout the day, but never the whole loop, just clips from it. Later that evening, Peyton's dad came up the driveway on his four-wheeler. He said he was looking for their dog, a sweet yellow lab who had been missing since that morning. Dad said he was sorry, and that he hadn't seen her. I stared at him, silently begging him to mention the recording, but he didn't. He was a quiet man after all. He didn't want to bring up any unnecessary drama. Mom stayed awake the whole week. Dad and I didn't sleep. By Saturday, the screaming could be heard constantly, though it seemed to have deviated from the familiar loop entirely. I didn't recognize any of it. Something the screams were thin and long. Other times they were hardly more than growls. Once, while my dad was heating up meatloaf for lunch, the noise rose to such a rancorous din that he dropped the plate and shattered. I pressed my hands over the ears where I sat at the table, squeezed my eyes shut, but it didn't help. The noise forced its way through the cracks of my fingers and pinched through my throat, rattled in my ribcage. The din lasted for the whole minute, then fell silent. The hell, that's some Nurse Jenny type of reading.
Fuck,
God
Nurse
damn.
Jenny?
Like, there's like no commas in there either.
Nurse
It,
Jenny. Okay.
okay, there we go.
It's
Dad was
okay.
shaking. That was the last we heard from that noise of that day. Peyton came by Saturday evening to ask permission to cross our road to collect the equipment. He was so excited, I watched him disappear into the creek bottoms with a sense of tired relief. After the equipment was gone, it would all stop. I couldn't wait to get a full night's sleep. Not another minute later, I spotted Peyton come back up the creek. I was confused. It had taken us much longer to set up the camera and speakers, so I'd only assumed it'd take just as long to collect them. My breath stilled. Payne came closer. He didn't look right. His eyes were His eyes were wide and his face was pale. Something went dribbled from his chin onto his shirt. I later realized that it was vomit. My dad caught him before he fell and demanded to know what happened. Peyton couldn't speak. He just cried. We called his dad. I looked for Peyton as both my dad and his dad went into the bottoms. They were gone a long time. When they returned, their faces were grim, and they smelled funny. I noticed red on my dad's hands. I asked what was wrong, and they brushed right past me and immediately called the police. Nobody tell me what happened. I sat on the couch as a blur of neighbors and police officers swirled around me. At one point, an officer placed something on the kitchen table and left. I looked into the kitchen curiously. It was the camera from the bottoms. I wish I hadn't looked. Okay, what are you thinking? What do you think it's gonna be on this?
The
You got
dead.
the maybe aliens. You got shadow creature. You got fucking Kim Kardashian nudes, Daisy porn. Anything can be on these cameras, dude.
I'm guessing the dead dog.
Yeah, probably. The camera was a little banged up. The scratches and dents covered the plastic casing. When I lifted my hand stuck to the plastic, something tacky and odorous covered the screen, but it turned on fine. The first set of photos were normal, just a pussy willow cast, green, and a glow night setting. Go ahead. As I continued to click through them, they quickly became strange. At one point, the camera angle changed, as if the camera had been knocked from its post. Grass now obscured most of the frame. Flecks of red appeared, and the lens remained for the rest of the sets. One photo made me pause. There was a figure in this one, or half of the figure, as most of the upper torso hadn't made it to the frame. I thought it was be human, but it didn't look like it could be standing upright. Its legs were twisted like an animal, and it seemed to have difficulty supporting itself on its upright position. Besides the legs, a long, thin arm hung. Whatever it was must have stooped over, for its fingertips hung below its crooked knees. The next set was different, as if the camera had been picked up, and it was now being held. The first photo was of the bottoms of the night. The next startled me. I had I had to look closely before deciding what it was. A rabbit had been peeled, laid in the bushes, but its ears and most of its scalp had been peeled away. The next was the same rabbit, but a thin, dark hand was holding it up against the sky. Its limp body hung like something from a nightmare. In the following photos, more rabbits joined the one, each with their ears and scalp removed. Then a cat, then more cats, then a dog, the yellow dog, then the lion. The following photos were 7 rabbits, 3 cats, 1 dog, and the lion all laid in a row facing the same way. Their arms and legs have been arranged as if they were marching. Like some parade, all of their scalps have been removed, and tiny white clits of their skulls could be seen. The last photo was overly bright, like the photo had been taken too close with the flash on. An eye dominated the frame, but it was yellow and crusty and had a barred pupil like a horse. In the bottom corner, the edge of the mouth could be seen. No lips, just teeth, sharp and little, with wide gaps of red gum between them. I wish I hadn't looked. I heard my dad talking to the police outside. They said the speakers had been malfunctioned. The recording only played the first night. Okay, that is the end of our story.
That's it.
That's it. Uh, thoughts?
Disappointment.
This one, maybe I read it weird. I feel like I was off, but I was struggling to be invested in this one. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's fucking disappointment, just straight up. Because it sounds like it's gonna fucking draw into a different like fucking abnormal creature doing this shit. It's just like no, just like we never
Um,
find out. We never found out.
the scary thoughts of like all the animals like scalps just straight up peeled off, and I guess the description of the creature was something. But you know, if I were to rank the three we've just done, this one's probably at the bottom.
Yep, not even a
Uh,
question.
yeah. All right, that's this episode.
face me, coward! I am through doing the bidding of the gods! Come down here and face me now, Zeus!